everyone, my name's Serena Barnsby and I'm thrilled to welcome you on behalf of the BCS Enterprise Architecture Specialist Group. Thank you for joining us today in this exciting event, the CIAM Challenge, Best Practices for Architecture, Secrets for Success. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Shana Dekris-Lawrence. Over to you, Shana.
Thank you. Thank you to the BCS for having me. So welcome everyone. Today I will be giving you a bit of an overview into the CIAM Challenge. And let's get into it. Let me know that my presentation comes through okay. If you're having any issues, shout. So who am I? My name is Shana Dekris-Lawrence. I'm a senior principal architect. I've been working in technology and architecture industry for just over 12 years now, mostly within the regulated industry. So what this means is mostly within government, department, agencies, some utility companies, and large scale businesses and organizations that are highly regulated or have to conform to some kind of regulations. In my past, I was an ex-developer. I used to do a lot of development in C++, Java, Python, before I moved into solution architecture. My niche is in identity and access management and CIAM, so I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I won't spoil the fun. And most recently, one of the projects that I recently come off was an award-winning CIAM solution. And here today, I'll be sharing with you a lot of the success that I took from that project, what success for CIAM looks like, and some of the learnings and challenges that you encounter when building a CIAM solution. In my downtime, if you want to call it that, I am also the founder of Architect Her, which is the logo you see behind me. Architect Her is a community for women in architecture. Regardless of your domain or speciality, we're here to support women, whether they're in architecture or aspiring to get into architecture. And we support you in terms of mentoring, events, one-to-one discussions, sharing knowledge and insights. Hence, I am here today sharing some knowledge and insights. And if you'd like to connect with me, that QR code takes you straight to my LinkedIn. So please do connect, give me a shout, let me know that you watched my presentation and let me know how I did. I'm always open to new connections. If you do have questions as we go through, please post them in the chat and we'll try to get through them towards the end. So in terms of the structure of this talk, I will be taking you through, telling you a little bit about CIAM, what it means, why it's so important, and then I'll go into some of the challenges that CIAM faces before moving into best practices, and then looking at some of the secrets for success. So what does success look like, and what's the secrets that you need to pick up along the way? And hopefully it should be a really interesting presentation for yourselves. So CIAM is a must-have technologies for a lot of organizations in customer-facing industries. Some of the recent stats have shown that 86% of customers will leave a brand that they trust after 2 poor customer experiences. And this could be, struggles with logging into their user management interfaces, struggles with their website, or even not being able to undertake the initiative that they're trying to do or derive the outcome that we're trying to get. So, which basically means the stakes are high. If you're a business and your business relies solely on customer interaction, you want to ensure that the interactions your customers are having with you and your organization and your services are top-notch, and they're of the highest quality, and you're getting the derived outcome you want your customers to get. So knowing this, what is CIAM? CIAM stands for Customer Identity Access Management. It's the capabilities that allow customers to access and manage their own user profiles on your customer portals and enable the efficiency and usability of your services It involves how customers access online services, how you secure their authentication onto your services, the privacy behind these services and how they share their privacy consents with you, and some of the seamless user experiences that we all take for granted when we're interacting with online brands and services. So CIAM has a fine balancing act that it's trying to maintain. It has to balance a good mixture of security, privacy, and user experiences. Security in terms that it has to enforce, some of the strongest authentication mechanisms to prove and authenticate you as a user, as a customer, when you're trying to gain access to the business or organization. Privacy in terms of sharing your consent to that organization. So what you are or not giving them permission to share. Are you giving them permission to update their subscriptions with you, to share email notifications with you? If you want to delete your data from their services, this is what privacy and consent management takes into account. And then we have the user experience. So at the end of the day, the user needs to have a unified experience, one that is friction-free, that ensures that they interact with your services and your sites in the best way possible to derive the outcome of your business, whether that is to make sales or to, win over a client, to gain more subscription, to gain submissions, whatever it is, you want that derived outcome that your business is looking for. So why is CIAM important then? It's essential for maintaining customer trust. This means that in the industry that we're in today, cybersecurity is a major threat, and it is something that all businesses are aware of. To be able to maintain trust, the customer must need to know that and understand the brand and the image that you're offering as a business. So for them to trust that each of your application or services that they're interacting with is you, as a business, and it is a good representation of you. It's clear from your design, their interaction, the wording, the look and feel, the login, the authentication, it is the same brand each time, and it's a consistent feel as they journey through your ecosystem. And the unified brand also helps, preserves your organization in terms of building the trust with customers, maintaining your brand image, how the organization is seen externally, and also preserve, the feedback your customer may give to you in terms of how they've interacted with your services. And then customer support, CIAM really plays a big part in reducing the pressures on customer support because it allows customers to manage their own identities within your ecosystem. So within CIAM, you have capabilities to update your user information, to change your name, to change your email address, to remove yourself from certain aspects or application, to grant or deny permission to certain aspects of your data. CIAM really bridges some of the gap and reduces the pressures on customer support because it allows your customer to have control of their data and how and the extent of the data that they share with you. Ahead. So ultimately, the customers want a secure, seamless sign-on experience. Triple S. Sounds easy, right? No, it's not that easy, unfortunately. So here, let's go into some of the challenges that CIAM faces and how and when they're encountered when designing a CIAM solution and what to look out for. So challenge number one, no single view of the customer. Imagine you have a toy box, and each time you look into that toy box, it shows you one toy at a time. The first time you look into it, it shows you some robots. You'll make assumptions about that toy box, right? You think that it's a toy box full of robots, but the next time you look, it might show you some dolls, and the next time you look, it might show you some action figures, which are also dolls. And the next time you look, it might show you some Lego. And this is what the businesses have to deal with, especially in ecosystems where they have multiple applications or the ecosystem is very vast. So each view of the customer, you may be making certain assumption about what the customer interaction is like based on that small interactions you've had with them. But you want to be able to see the full contents of that toy box. You want to have a holistic view of that customer for each interaction. So you have an holistic view of what that customer likes, dislikes, what they like to interact with, how long they interact with your services for, what kind of interactions do they have, what's their buying patterns like, what's their marketing preferences like, and have one holistic view that you can truly see to understand what your customers are like. And in large ecosystems, this is a major challenge for organizations because the data is usually split across many and multiple systems. And in some, they're even stored, in different formats, different data. One system might store, username as the unique identifier, when others may choose to use email address as the unique identifier. So there's not a single view of the customer, and there might be split data across multiple systems. And you also have to take into consideration partial view of the customer as well. So each application system may only understand the interaction that customer has with their application. So if you take big organizations, that you deal with on a regular basis, for example, government industries where you're interacting with different aspects of government services, your interaction with each service may be different. And each time you're sharing information with them, but each time they're asking you for that information over and over again. So each application has a partial view of you. And sometimes these data might be missing or duplicated, meaning that when it comes to migrating or consolidating these data, it's a mess. You really have to think about the identifiers that you're going to be merging on, how you bring this data together, and the challenges around sharing the data and how the best formats to share it in, given that the data is duplicated in different systems. And that duplication might be necessary. It might be valid for the business. There's all different constraints and concerns or trade-offs that you have to consider as the architect when you think about missing and duplicate data for a CIAM system. So the challenge here is that it's really difficult and critical to develop a 360 perspective of the customer, especially when you're thinking about CIAM. So this is a major challenge when designing your CIAM systems. That feeds nicely into what the business wants, right? Balancing security and usability. So the business wants to have a holistic view of the customer. They want to have a smooth interface, no friction, get you to the outcome that's the derived outcome for that business. If it's sales, they want you to have to purchase that product. They want you to make that subscription. They want you to get to the outcome as fast as you can. Whereas security is thinking about how best they are and how they're protecting the security of that business. So they want to be able to prove that you are who you say you are, that you're authenticating using methods that is not, that there are low risk to, that you're using MFA, that you're showing proof of life. If they ask you to look out the window and tell you how much traffic lights they see, because that's proof of life these days in a lot of these interactive systems that we interact with. So security and usability of the business are always at a trade-off in trying to understand and come up with the best solution that balances nicely the security of what we're asking for and the usability of it, and then adapting to the customer behavior. So ensuring that we're taking into account how the user likes to interact with the system that they're interacting with. So whether they like to use a mobile device to interact with it, as when you're thinking about the security of that, are you restricting mobile device access to your application and services? Your customer may like to authenticate with SMS, but SMS is proved to be, a very risky MFA option. Is that risk supported within the industry that you're building within? Is there a risk that your business is willing to accept? So there are different trades-off and challenges that, the fine balance of usability and security have to really overcome when you're thinking of developing and designing your CIAM solution. And then scaling. So you might wonder, what does CIAM have to do with scaling your business? But picture this, we're a few months away from peak shopping periods. So that's Cyber Monday and, the lead up to Christmas. Businesses, especially online retail businesses, this is peak volumes for users accessing their retail platforms, making purchases, logging into their accounts. So your CIAM solution really underpins the gateway and is the access to your customers, making those sales, gaining access to your services so that they can, derive the outcome that they're looking for. And you really have to consider how you scale your CIAM solution to be able to handle these demanding growth or these spikes of concurrent authentications. So you may have a predicted level of growth, and you have to think about what does concurrent authentication, so concurrent meaning multiple authentication requests happening all at the same time, how many of those your system can support. And then also think about, if this is standard at peak, what could it support? And is this peak volume, within the range of our business or outside of it? So when you think about some of the challenges that CIAM has to face, it really has to take into consideration the unforeseen burst of traffics that come through from being able to log into a platform and make a purchase and seeing those transactions all the way through. And CIAM plays a part in all of that because it is the front door to your customers and to your businesses in a lot of cases. And a challenge which is often overlooked and full of surprises is the integration complexity. So in CIAM solutions, when you're designing, you often, downplay the risk of integration complexities. So you may not have considered how much effort or how much change or resilience you have to build into your system because of third-party integrations. And these might come at the wrong time when you're already in production or at a got-you moment when you've finished design or you've done a lot of the implementation for your system. So when we talk about integration complexity, this is the integration of, could be legacy applications. If you're in a large ecosystem, you may think about, what does each of those applications that needs to onboard to the CIAM solution looks like? How do they interact with, the modern CIAM concept? Are they using, common standards and protocols like OAuth and JWTs, or are they on, old-fashioned authentication methods like Kerberos and others? Or are they even using their own handwritten authentication patterns and protocols? So you have to think about what does integration with legacy application looks like. And also when you're integrating with third-party systems, you have to consider the challenge of customer databases and the identification and verification of those systems. So how long does the verification take? What's the response times for those third-party systems? Are they returning data in the format that you're expecting to use it within, or do you have to do some transformation on that data, which then eats into your response times? So those all feed into the complexity of your integration. You may think that, well, I would just connect to Facebook and Google or any social provider, even Office 365, and it's job done. But no, the complexity comes with having an understanding of what pitfalls comes with these integration, their response times, their high availability, and the interconnectivity between them. And then last one is around the various platform and applications as well as environments. So when you're designing your CIAM solution, you really have to consider the platforms and applications that are using your solution. So how the privilege escalation is done, how does customers gain access, how do you elevate or de-elevate a customer in certain situations? Say, for example, they're accessing a website that doesn't require much restriction. So they just log in and go ahead. There is no elevated privileges needed. But do they need to elevate their privileges to make changes to their identity data? And how do you step up that authentication? How do you prove, or in that instance, make a change to that customer privilege so that they can carry out those authentication requests? So these are some of the challenges faced when you're designing for a CIAM solution. So given all of that, it might seem like doom and gloom, but there are some best practices for implementation that is worth noting that will help you when you're designing and developing your CIAM solution. So here are some of the best practices. Practice number one, use a single identity. So a single identity ensures that the engagement with your customers is consistent across the entire ecosystem of your organization. So whether it is one application or many applications, if you decide, not if, but you have to really decide upon a single identity that will be used across the entire ecosystem. So you have one identifier for identifying that customer. And this will help with ensuring that as the user moves between applications, you can always identify who that user is and, start to collect more and more information about how they use your product or services. It's easier said than done deciding on one single identifier, but it's a decision that is worth investing in and understanding what that means for your business upfront, because that identifier can mean, what credential the user used to log in with and how they interact with your services. So do push through and adapt a single unique identifier for your customers so that their interaction with your business is consistent throughout. Second, decide on the custodian of the customer data. So in organizations where you have disparate data in many different places, you may have, one system, your marketing system having one view of your data, your sales system having another view, your payment system having another view, your subscription system having another view. And all of these systems might be holding different sets of that same customer data. You need to make a decision on who is the custodian of the customer data, whether that is your customer identity access management platform, whether that's your customer relationship management platform, or another. There is no single magic wand or one right answer for this. It really depends on the industry and the domain that you're working within and the constraints or outcomes your business is looking to derive. So understanding who the custodian of the data is will help you to understand where or how you manage updates to your customer data. If it's happening within CIAM, then you know that you're the master of that data. All updates need to be fed through the CIAM system. If you're not the master of that system, then you really have to think about the design patterns and principles of how you federate out or how you share updates through your systems. So whether you have an events model to make sure that, every time a customer reference data is updated, all of your subsystems are informed, or whether you subscribe to different patterns or protocols to do this. And the third one is around embracing a service design pattern and principles. So this is, zooming out of your tunnel vision. Sometimes you get a lot of tunnel vision developed when you're looking at one application in isolation, but look at the whole service that your business operates within, and think about the best design patterns that will help you to get to the customer journey and design for that customer journey in mind. So don't just think about each application in isolation. Think about the whole principle of what you're designing, what the look and feel is for your customer interactions, how the services will interact with how the users will interact with your services. What is the common user interface? What's the login details they're using? How are they changing their information? How are they making changes to their profile, or if they run into issues? How are they raising concerns? Have a holistic view of the design and patterns for that business or organization. And tip number 3, so best practice number 2, is build a secure and friction-free user interface. So minimize the friction that your customer faces during identification and verification processes. Simplify the registration and login. What does that mean? That means have a simple login, only ask for the information that you require within that transaction or that operations they're undertaking. So if they're trying to do a login, or if they're trying to do a registration, only ask for the information that's relevant as part of that registration to get them to the derived outcome. So if it's just that you need, just their email address, just ask for just that. Don't ask for over and above, because sometimes a lot of customers don't really want to share more than they need to. And we're all taught about, best practices within the industries, not to overshare our information. So only ask for the information you need in that moment. Give responsive feedback. So when you're designing your login and registration pages, have, responsive feedback that tells the customer what's gone wrong. If their password is incorrect, or if, they have to meet particular standards in the password policy, have clear, informative icons, messaging to dictate this, so the customer doesn't come into friction or don't understand what is being asked of them. And then provide strong and varied authentication options. Each customer is different, so having a range of authentication options really help to bridge the gap and help to make the experience feel unique to each customers. I myself like to use authenticator apps. I might not necessarily like to share my mobile number for MFA. So authentication apps and OTPs are the options I normally choose. But other customers may want to choose, a YubiKey if you offer that. Or they might want to have MFA on their mobile phone, or one-time tokens, or a magic link. Having different and varied options really helps to give your customer ease and allow them to log in. And this goes the same for registration. So make use of social logins, especially you're designing for customers. A customer like to get to the outcome fast. If you provide login with Facebook, login with Google, login with Instagram, whatever it is for your customer set, it will make that interaction a lot easier. So play to your customer needs and wants, and give your customer control of their data. So allow them to manage their own profile, give them the self-service option so that they can do account recovery if things go wrong. Provide control over the data that they're sharing with you. If they want to restrict or delete or remove, the data that they've previously shared with you, they have the option to do this within your CIAM solution, reducing the need for them to interact with your web chat or call your customer service solution. That all builds into reducing the friction, ensuring that your customers stay your customers and have a pleasant interaction with your systems. And then when it comes to designing for scalability and performance, the best practice here is to have a think about your high availability and your automatic scaling, as well as your health and performance management. And monitoring. What do I mean by this? If you're building from scratch. If you're developing your CIAM solution yourself, think about the high availability of that solution. As discussed previously, you have to think about your consistent load. So what does your average load looks like, as well as your peak load? And when it's, you know, if you have some growth coming in your business, what does that potentially look like, and what does peak of that looks like, and build your high availability and automatic scaling with these kind of things in mind. Think about your database access. That's sometimes something that is overlooked and what is one of the best practices. So how does your CIAM solution access your database to verify passwords? So each time your customers are interacting, you know, entering their username and password, your user interface is making a call to the database system to verify the hash, if you're storing it in a hash of that password. If you're not storing it in an encrypted format or a hash, you've got problems. But if you're storing it, how is the call to the database being made? Is your database a single database that you're doing read, writes, and updates from? Are you spreading that load across having one write database and 2 reads, so that the read updates are only going to the read requests are only going to the read databases, and then any updates for write or making changes are going to that write database? That will help with your performance issues and making sure that, you know, at peak times, customers can authenticate fast against your system and not run into performance or load issues. And it will also help you to defend against some cybersecurity threats like denial of service, because you're able to scale and grow to meet peak traffic. And then think about how you performance test all of this. So it's fantastic that you've designed it, you've built it in, you thought about it up front, but really test it from end to end, and understand your response time. If you need to build in any rate limiting factors, if you notice that, you know, for certain periods, it takes an image for your CIAM solution to load a lot longer, you know, because you're loading a really large image. Have an understanding of that would really play nicely into how your system is performing, and then you can mitigate any issues. And have a look at the end-to-end. Don't just do your CIAM solution in isolation. If you're interacting with third-party systems, like your social logins or your Microsoft 365, do the end-to-end of those systems also, because their response time might be different, better or worse than what your business is asking for. So being able to understand what those response time is looking like and how it feeds into the overall response of the system that you're designing will help you dramatically in making sure that you can scale and meet performance targets. So having full end-to-end performance testing, usability testing, and end customer testing really helps you to unpick any challenges that you may not have foreseen. And don't forget token, session management, and cookie management. This is a fun topic, right? So token management, session, and cookie is something that you really have to think about upfront, because if you're designing for an ecosystem that have many different types of application, each of those may want to manage sessions in a different way or have different session length. So having an understanding of whether you're going to have one single session management policy for your entire business. Again, this is your service design. So having a look at the entirety of your service and having a pattern for it. So one session management policy for your entire service, or each individual application having their own. Same for token and cookie management. In some cases, they might need their own. For example, if you're having a web interface that is a landing page that your customer interacts with, say, for example, you're accessing a retail service and you log in to browse what to buy, your session for that might be longer than the session for them to log in and update their core user credentials. So to be able to browse and buy and add to the basket, you might want a longer session, maybe in a couple of hours, couple of days. if your risk and tolerance to that is quite low. And for you making changes to your user and payment capabilities, you might want to have a really short session management. So these really play into, and it may lead to a lot of fun conversations with your security team and business team, because again, this really comes down to the business and security objectives. Security will be hard, fast, and having really short session token and time management, in the business may want really lenient to give that nice customer feel, so that the customer don't constantly having to log in, log out as they move throughout your ecosystem. So there's a fine balance to be had here. And this is, something that you really have to think about when you're designing your CIAM solution. And then standards, patterns, and protocols. So as you think about interacting with the ecosystem of, CIAM and third-party services, how you interact with different providers, start to use and develop and maintain standards and patterns, meaning adopt, architecture standards or patterns in terms of, using SAML, using JWT, standards within the industry that you're not rewriting yourself. You can always understand how these patterns work, how they interact with other systems, and there is a clear format, a clear response service and response mechanism to it that you can share with your system operators. So adopt standards and protocols. Secure by the design, which obviously I've got to say I come from a security background. So this means, think about the security of the end-to-end system, not just the MFA. Think about how you're securing your full CIAM solution. So if you have users accessing directly on your interface, what kind of devices are they accessing from? Do you want to restrict any of those devices? Or the browsers that they're using, do you want to restrict some of those? Depending on the environment and the industry you're in, you may answer yes or no to some of that. And then the same for API access. Do your systems or do your business support API access? What does your API authentication method looks like? You really have to think about how you design the holistic CIAM solution to make it secure intentionally, rather than trying to attach security on it later on. So having to think about the locations of your users, because your users are targeted in a particular location, or they're all UK based, or are they multinational or international customers where you can't put much restriction on it. And do you care to put much restriction on it for a business, depending on the industry you're in? So have a think about and really understand the domain you're in, some of the standard security patterns for ensuring the security of the service you're building, and defending against cyber attacks or cyber intrusions onto your platforms. And then having a cross-channel consistency. So this means that when your customer is interacting with your website, and you've done all this fantastic work to make sure that your website is secure by design, when they access it via mobile, you're not leaving loopholes. There isn't ways for them to bypass security features because they're going in via mobile. And the same for your API access as well. So have a think about your cross-channel consistency, and the same for the look and feel. So customers are often going between, devices, the laptops, your computers, and mobile. So having a consistent feel will also help with your brand and reputation. And if your CIAM system also conforms to that consistent look and feel, and the option that's offered is consistently the same, then the returns for your business will grow in this regards. And lastly, maintaining data accuracy and integrity. So as you integrate with third-party applications, even applications within your ecosystem. How are you maintaining data accuracy? So ensuring that the data is, the source of truth at each time, and ensuring the integrity of it, that it's not being corrupted, interfered with, or, accessed by those that's not supposed to access it. So think about your data sharing policies. Are you using standards again in how you share data across your ecosystem? Are you the source of that data or the source of truth? So all access requests must come into your CIAM system, then you federate out. Have an understanding of how you will interact with, social providers who are giving you, their source of truth against that customer. And if that customer data change, you have to also absorb that. And is that something your business want to take? Does the customer logging in with OTP using Google, and then the next day logging in with just their, with SMS as the MFA, does that interfere with the policies for your CIAM system? And that's something you have to think about. So how you design to ensure that the data, within the ecosystem of CIAM stays accurate and integrity of it is maintained. The integrity of it is maintained. So after you've done all of that, then you will have a well-architected CIAM solution. And yes, I stole that from AWS. So a well-architected CIAM solution includes, having your user registration, ensuring smooth, frictionless access, a variety of devices and platforms, having consistent look and feel and security policies that is maintained throughout them. Profile management for your customers so that they can self-manage, give consent to sharing or not sharing aspects of their data, if they want to subscribe or not subscribe, if they want to remove their data completely from your system, that option is there for them to self-manage. The same with account recovery. Governance and analytics in terms of managing customers' data, so being able to provide a rich and full image of that customer and their interaction within your ecosystem. So the type of interactions they have, how long they're spending in different services, what is their typical login, what's their typical login pattern? Do they usually log in the morning or in the night? Do they usually use MFA, SMS or OTP? You can start to build a full picture of your customers because you have a CIAM solution. And the analytics of that can then feed into your wider business to help you grow and have a return on this investment that you've done in CIAM. And then authentication. So being able to verify your customer's identity, having a variety of options for your customers, both with how they're logging in, the ability to log in using different forms of MFA, if you want to support biometrics or not, and being able to adapt to new and emerging authentication options as well. And lastly, authorization. So being able to grant and restrict access based on a user role. So if a user needs to be able to have elevated privileges in one application, how do you maintain that within your CIAM solution? Are you stepping up their authentication at certain points? Does your system allow you to do that? And are you designing for that kind of architecture? And then the same for restricting access. So if the customer asks, or if you need to remove them from a certain application, how does that restriction then play into them being taken out of, or their role being reduced for that application? So it's a fully fledged CIAM solution that incorporates how the user interacts, both from a customer and a user perspective, and as well as API. There's a larger precedence at the moment about API access, and more businesses are buying into, allowing APIs to access their interfaces. So do not, underestimate your API access. Always think about how it falls in against all of these as well. So now you have it. You have a well-architected CIAM solution. You understand the challenges, you know some of the best patterns for implementing your CIAM solution. You're on the home stretch. So here are some of the secrets for success that I have really picked up, you know, through my learning, my working industry over the last 12 years, some things that may have been got you that I am now sharing with you. So here are some secrets. Number one, choose the right platform. When you're thinking about designing your CIAM solution, think about whether you want to build from scratch or choose an off-the-shelf solution. Each have its own pros and cons, and it really depends on the industry you're in, how fast you want to get to your idea of, you know, your CIAM solution, and how you know you want to see that development, if you have the in-house team to develop and implement it and the knowledge to do it, or if you want to choose a solution that's off the shelf that comes with all the bells and whistles and you can configure and orchestrate that yourself. And also have a think about whether you're going cloud versus on-premise or even hybrid. What does that look like for your customer user base and your scalability factors and your performance factors? You may be working within a restricted industry where you can't put your solution on the cloud. So then you have to think about on-premise options, or you might be in an industry where some of your customers are using services which are on-premise, so you have to have a mixture of hybrid. So have a think about and design, you know, with either a customized solution or an out-the-box. The second one is federated versus centralized identity management. So one of the challenges that you'll typically face is whether you go with a centralized or a decentralized approach. And decentralization at the moment, you know, is all the talk of the identity industry. So you'll have a lot to read about how to build a great decentralized system. And that might be right for the industry that you're in. And the same for centralized. So centralized meaning that your identity solution is handled by one central management system. Each approach has its pros and cons, its trade-off, and they might be useful, you know, depending on the industry that you're in. So if you're building your solution, have a think about how your customers interact with your services. Who owns or who's the master of the data? Do you care about where the authority of that data is coming from? Do you need to be the authority of that data, or can somebody else be? If you're verifying documents, if you're verifying IDs, do you need to host that internally, or can you use decentralization techniques or approach to federate out the verification of a person of who they say they are? So really have to think about the industry that you're working within, whether a centralized or a federated model is best for you. And thirdly, future-proof your architecture. It's no fun when you are designing and you've spent ages thinking about the best approach for your system, and you realize that your customers don't like to interact with it in the way that you thought they might have liked to interact with it. So have a think about emerging technologies, biometric, you know, tokens, keys, authentication keys, all of this are coming in, and have a think about how you future-proof your architecture to ensure that you're meeting your customer where they are or where they want to be. And you know, AI is the talk of the town, and AI can be very useful and very, very beneficial in the CIAM system because it can help to detect anomalies and help to improve your authentication mechanism. And a good use case for this is if you embed AI into your CIAM system, you can use it to detect whether what's a normal behavioral pattern for your customer. If their normal behavior is to log in from the UK at 6 o'clock each evening, and tomorrow they're logging in from Australia at 1 p.m. You can use, you can train your AI model to detect and react to that so that you can implement step-up authentication in certain places, so that you can ask your customers to prove, who they are and be able to validate their authentication with yourselves. So make use of the advancement in technologies to future-proof your architecture. And lastly, ensure flexibility and agility. So build for growth, so being able to meet customer demand, especially for your performance and your scalability. It's great. What a perfect scenario would be if you're designing for, a user base of today for 6,000 users, and then tomorrow, you go viral and all of a sudden your user base has doubled, quadrupled, and you need to be able to grow to meet that demand. So ensure that you're building in flexibility and agility into your architecture, ensuring that you have, as I've said, standards, design and principles, especially in orchestrating a good scalability model, having load balancers, API gateways, managing your databases and access to your databases so that you can keep up with changes and have regular iterations over your identity model. Technology industry is changing at a fast pace. So trying to design everything up front will never get you there in the industry that we're working in. So have an iterative model where you're adding features, you're adding solutions to meet your customer requirements, so that you're giving real tangible feedback to your customers and they're seeing the improvements that you're making. And it keeps the system updated with latest patches, improvements in technology. You don't just want to design your CIAM system and that's it, wash your hands, you're done. It's a security system at the end of the day. It's there to protect your customers as they gain access to your organization and the payment system, the outcomes that you want your business to derive. And CIAM is the front door to a lot of these organizations that have customer as their central requirements. So do have a think about how you design for flexibility and agility so you can meet and adapt to these changes. And that's it. I'm out of secrets. So that's it. If you've got any questions, do post them in the chat. I'll give you guys a chance to have a think. Zarina can let me know if we've got any questions in the chat.
So firstly, thank you very much for telling us all the secrets and best practices in regards to that presentation. Earlier during the session, there was a message which was about when you're doing best practices, this design and scalability performance. There's just a comment in regards to something. I'm not sure if you had a chance to see it, but it says a great principle, customer managing their own data. It certainly aligns with GDPR, etc. One consideration to have is that some users within a limited command of IT or that may need to rely on others to manage their identity and access. And consent still needs to be demonstrated to be informed, etc.
Yeah.
Some stuff and yeah. But
I like that. I think the point is to make sure that we still inform or demonstrated to be informed. Am I getting that right?
Yes. Yeah, consent still needs to be demonstrated to be informed. So this is where other people rely on others to manage their identity access.
Yes, yes. So GDPR is very big, within the security industry within the UK. So we always have to show how we're conforming to the policies and the standards of that. And one of those is to be able for the customer to be able to maintain, give access and request the deletion of their data from your systems and your your applications or ecosystem. So one of the ways to do that is to build it into your CIAM solution. So you can have solutions that have, the Dropbox or the tick boxes to say what they give or they don't give consent to. Or if you're still developing your CIAM solution, you can have other routes or other channels for your customers to feed that in, so that if they do want to delete themselves totally from your system, they have the option to do that. And I think, if I'm not wrong, business and organizations have a restricted time from when a customer requests that for it to be done. So you can't just be getting the request through and sitting on it. You need to be able to show accountability and show that, yes, you have deleted the customer and this is their data removed from your system.
Thank you. And another comment inside the chat on what this is from Lucy, which is awesome talk. Thank you very much. And then there's a message from Robin, which is a question. How do you see CIAM different to normal IAM, apart from the user base being external, not internal?
Good question. You know what? I missed it. I think I was going too fast. I should have touched on that in the beginning. But good question, Robin. So CIAM is the customer identity access management, and the IAM, so identity access management, is usually the workforce or the enterprise side of identity access management. So you typically have identity access management within your organization. You don't get to the access to self-service to manage your own identities within your workforce solution. You may not get, an ease of use identity system where it's giving you good feedback, is responding to your policies or what devices that you want to use. A lot of these are restricted or set by the organization. You don't get a lot of preferences in terms of the social logins that you want to use. In organization, they set out the policies and an IAM system will adhere to that. Whereas in CIAM, you're designing for your customer. So you're making the system as beneficial or useful to your customers as possible. So you're giving them more options that will meet them where they are. You're giving them ease of use. So you're not trying to make it any more difficult for them to do business with you. If anything, you're making it as easy as possible. So in your login interface, if they're trying to make a purchase off the website, you have the guest checkout because you want them to get straight to handing over the money. Whereas in your workforce system and you're trying to log into your work's payment system or whatever it is, they want you to tick all the boxes and prove who you are before they can before the transaction begins. So CIAM has a focus on the customer, and IAM's just identity access management is just looking at the access and the management of the identity, where CIAM is the customer focus.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the group? I do remember you also put your LinkedIn details as well. So I'll put that inside the chat as well. Oh, perfect.
Yes. And whilst you're thinking of more questions, like I said, I am the founder of Architect Her, and we are having our next event around Fail Forward, Harnessing Mistakes for Success, on Wednesday, the 2nd of October in Bank, a venue near Bank, St. James Palace. So do feel free to come along and have a chat with me about CIAM or CIAM architecture. It's an open forum, so we do welcome men and women, especially men who are allies and want to, see more women in architecture or help to propel more women into architecture. So do scan the QR code, register, sign up, come along, say hi, grab a drink, grab a sandwich, sit down and enjoy the event.
Fantastic. We've had another message. So this is again from Paolo. When a B2C user is extending from a B2B, multiple identities may exist. Any advice for selecting CIAM tool sets that are able to implement the best practices and enable the customer to use all their identities and minimize new liabilities for the organization?
So there are a few vendors on the market that will enable you to do just that. So bridge identities from multiple social logins into one. And you can then map which credentials or which attributes you want to use to then identify and map it into that single identity for your customer so that they can then continue to traverse into your business or your ecosystem. So I can't remember what they like the name for it is or what they call it. I'm sure they will call it something a bit different within their products, but it is becoming a standard on the market, and a lot of the vendors like Ping Identity, ForgeRock, Okta, they all have this within their capabilities. And you can also, if you're designing from scratch, do the same thing as well, because each of those identity providers, you set which kind of integration pattern you're going to have with them, whether it's SAM or whether it's a JWT, which kind of attributes you're using as your identifier. And then when those attributes are passed in, you then can use it to map, and you design the mapping or the orchestration within your CIAM system to say, if I get a username from Google, then I map it to email address in my CIAM system, and you do the mapping within CIAM to enable that nice handover, regardless of the amount of social system that customer might be using. And then you can have that one holistic view as they start to go across them.
Fantastic. A couple more posts saying very insightful session. Thank you, Shana. And thank you, Shana. Very insightful. One thing I'd like to also mention is that if you're interested in more sessions like this or finding out a little bit more about the BCS Enterprise Architecture Specialist Group, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in our LinkedIn group inside the chat. And that'll give you updated information in regards to different events that we've got running. I know this is yet to, it's going to be sent out soon, but we've also got the BCS EA all-day conference, which is held in person at the BCS London office, but you can also join virtually, and that'll be on Friday, the 11th of October, and it is all day from 9 o'clock to including networking and nibbles and socialing and social until 6:30. I'll put the link for Eventbrite as well, so you can catch up on any events that are run by the BCS community. Oh, perfect. And you've got your connect with me for LinkedIn. Brilliant.
So please do connect with me if you want to talk any more CIAM, or if you just want to say hi, I'm open to it. Or if you want to join the architecture community, we're growing and we're looking for new and aspiring architects all the time. So do join us if architecture is a domain that you do want to consider or get into.
Any other questions for the group? We'll leave it open for a couple of moments before we look at closing. But I'll be joining in the St. James's Place event as well as the BCS one. So busy couple of weeks with exciting things ahead for the world of architecture. And then we've got thank you for the great seminar. Well done, and thank you. 2 different people this is. It's worth attending and a great presentation.
Brilliant. Thank you everyone for the feedback. This is my first BCS presentation, so I really appreciate the kind words and feedback.
Fantastic. And one thing I would also like to mention, and this is something which I frequently get asked, because the BCS specialist group is called Enterprise Architecture, does it include all other aspects of architecture? Just to say, we are the only specialist group for architecture. It is something in terms of the name revision we potentially are looking at. But if you're business architecture, security architecture, data, solution, technical, infrastructure, cloud, as well as enterprise and beyond, this is the perfect forum inside of this community and group.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we will give you some time back to spend at home or virtually wherever you are. And thank you very much for joining. And thank you very much, Anna, for this fantastic presentation.
Brilliant. Thank you all for attending. I appreciate it. Thank you, Zarina, by the way. Great host.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Hi, Lucy. I'm just going to say hi to you.